been withdrawn. I just want to make sure everybody's back. Are we back?
Back.
I see 5 people. Where's Jim?
Jim is eating, and he will turn his camera on in 30 seconds.
Okay, great. No problem. No problem. I ate fast. Okay, 9B has been withdrawn. We are now to 9C, 3032 Wilshire Boulevard, 20 ENT 0170 conditional use permit. This is the 24-hour convenience market. Let me remind everyone that we are on 2-minute public comment. We're on 10-minute applicant statement, and the staff should be ready to go. So let's do ex partes first and go from there. And if we can, I'll just start we'll start with we'll just go around. Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi? Sorry, none? Okay. Commissioner Fresco?
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Lambert?
I drove by the site this afternoon.
Okay. Commissioner Pastor?
I drove by the site on Tuesday, and I have had multiple communications with the applicant's representative on the telephone, and I've received multiple emails from the applicant representative.
Okay. Commissioner Raskin?
I have been to the site on several occasions, nothing else.
Commissioner Reese?
I walked the site Sunday afternoon, and I have had 2 phone calls with the outreach person for the project.
Okay. Commissioner Reese, there's something with your mic that is like doing this. I don't know how else to describe it. Like a feedback loop.
I'm going to switch to another Wi-Fi. I had to change rooms. Maybe that'll help.
Okay. I will just, let's see, October 30th, November 3rd, and November 4th, I had 3 telephone conversations with Ira Handelman, who, regarding the security plans and regarding the hours of operation, and that is my report. I'll state for the record that I know Mr. Handelman through other through nonprofit organizations. We have no relationship, and but I do want to disclose that, and but I'm able to participate in this item without any trouble.
I forgot to mention that I've had a phone call with the applicant's representative.
Okay. All right. Let us have the staff report then.
Great. Good evening, commissioners. Let me just get this going.
While you're doing that, I think I forgot to mention I've been by the site once.
Okay. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good evening. My name is Kerry Fukui. I'm an associate planner with the City Planning Division, and I'm presenting CUP 20 ENT 0170 tonight for 3032 Wilshire Boulevard. So the site is located along Wilshire Boulevard, 1 tenant space in from the southwest corner of Wilshire and Berkeley. The parcel is located within a split zone lot. The subject building is located off of Wilshire in the MUB mixed use boulevard zone. And behind, directly adjacent to the commercial building, is the parking lot portion, which is zone R2A. So this is used as commercial parking for the subject building. The site's irregularly shaped and approximately 29,500 square feet. So the proposed request tonight is for a convenience market use that'll occupy 2,250 square feet of a 10,010 square foot 2-story commercial building. A conditional use permit is required for convenience market use in the mixed use boulevard zone per SMMC 9.11.020. And this use is defined as a convenience market in that the establishment proposes to sell a limited line of groceries and prepackaged food items on a 24-hour basis. And I want to note that the application for this conditional use permit does not include the sale of alcoholic beverages. So the project is located within a 2-story commercial building. The building has 9 total tenant spaces, 7 of which are on the ground floor and 2 others are on the second floor. The proposed convenience market has 2 access points to the site. So customers will access the 7-Eleven off of Wilshire Boulevard, with access also provided off the rear parking lot, which is shown by this dashed red line. The rear of the building is zoned for R2A and contains a total of 59 parking spaces, 8 of which, highlighted here in blue, are designated for short-term use for 7-Eleven patrons. The site received ARB approval in 2016 for a facade renovation. That has since been completed, and the applicant has applied for a building permit for an interior renovation. And this does not include any additional proposals to change the exterior of the building, so there won't be any additional review for the ARB. So the proposed convenience market is proposed to operate on a 24-hour basis and will occupy 2,250 square feet. 1,439 square feet of that will actually be the sales floor area. This business operation of the 7-Eleven is slightly different from typical convenience markets in that they plan to provide an expanded option of fresh and prepared foods, which would be delivered daily, and will have more of a gourmet-style coffee bar serving fresh juice, coffee, and ground coffee. So unlike traditional 7-Elevens, this concept is intended to be more of a neighborhood market based off its offerings, which exclude alcohol beverages. And additionally, this is different from comparable convenience markets, which are typically in the city located in strip malls with parking loaded in the front of the building, whereas this convenience market will have parking located in the rear. The applicant has had several outreach meetings with Northeast neighbors and residents. On October 6th, the applicant had a meeting with the Northeast Neighbors Neighborhood Group to discuss concerns related to the project. They also provided a walkthrough on October 20th with the neighborhood group as well as with the police department to discuss any specific concerns related to the site. These concerns led to the development of the applicant's security plan, which also took into account the security assessment, which was provided by the Santa Monica Police Department. So the main concerns raised by both Northeast neighbors and from public input that I've received over the last few months were mostly related to trash, traffic, a saturated market of similar uses in the area, crime and loitering, and noise that would be related to the late night use of the parking area in the rear. So to address these noise concerns, the applicant submitted a noise study, which is attachment G. And the study concluded that the proposed convenience market would be consistent with the city's noise ordinance. But however, typical noise generated from a surface parking lot include more abrupt and instantaneous noises like car door slams or loud conversations, which are more difficult to account for. So this is why staff proposed more limited hours of operation to mitigate any of the impacts related to the noise from the proposed use. And to address the security concerns, the applicant met with the residents and the police department and requested a complimentary security assessment from SMPD. So they provide these security surveys to residents and businesses to assess safety of properties and provide information on how they can decrease the likelihood of crime at that property. So based off that security survey, the applicant provided an updated security plan, which is provided in your supplemental staff reports. Staff reviewed the plan and recommended including the security measures as conditioned in condition number 5. This condition includes, as you can see in this plan, an 8-foot tall perimeter wall around the parking area adjacent to the residential zones, LED security lighting in the parking area and at the rear of the building, security guard from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m., security cameras to be installed per the recommendation in the Santa Monica Police Department security assessment, restricting customer access so they can only enter off of Wilshire Boulevard, and then restricting access to that rear door from the parking lot, and that leads to the restroom and to the rear exit of the 7-Eleven. That would be more restricted for either exit only or emergency exit based on compliance with fire and building and safety requirements. So the applicant also proposed additional measures such as architectural features, prevent loitering on the bench at the corner of Berkeley and Wilshire, hallway mirrors, locking the restroom doors, and adding and locking doors at the other tenant areas off of the hallway. But staff determined that this was slightly out of the scope of this conditional use permit for this specific convenience market and more related to the overall building operations. Therefore, we did not include those measures as part of the security plan condition number 5. Staff recommended, so overall we recommended the following 5 special conditions for the site. The first being restricting operating hours from 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. daily. Restricting deliveries from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily. Restricting exterior noise generating activity between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. and noise generating like from cleaning and equipment from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. daily. We also prohibited the sale of alcoholic beverages with this conditional use permit and required the applicant to continue to work with the city planning division and the police department to approve the security plan and incorporate security and operational changes mentioned in the previous slide. Additionally, we recommend operational conditions 15 through 20, which ensure that the operator adjusts any potential impacts as a result of noise from patrons and loitering. So the required findings for the CUP, there are 8 total that must be met in order to approve this conditional use permit. The findings are all listed here, which include but aren't limited to the requirement for the project to be compatible with existing surrounding land uses and compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. So public correspondence was received from the community. We sent out notices in a 750-foot radius and also advertised in the San Juan Daily Press. I received about 94 comments in total, 92 of which were in opposition, 2 were in favor. So the staff recommendation tonight is to approve the conditional use permit 20 ENT 0170 and the statement of official action subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. We'll open up for comments and questions.
Great, thank you. And let's also make sure that folks who registered to speak, please do check your emails for the call-in number, and I assume that that number is open for people to call in and be on hold. So go ahead and make sure you're ready to go there. Let's start with Commissioner Fondo Bernardi.
All right, no questions.
Great. Commissioner Fresco. No questions? Okay. Commissioner Lambert. No questions. Commissioner Pastor. Nope. Commissioner Raskin.
Yeah, I have a quick question. For the additional security measures that were proposed, I think this is attachment B to the supplemental staff report, were those formulated purely by the police department, or was planning involved in the formulation of those as well?
So that was based off of the applicant's outreach with the community groups and then also off of the security assessment provided by the Santa Monica Police Department.
Okay, so those are proposed by the applicants and not by the planning department?
Right.
Okay. Did you or anyone else in the planning department have any input in best practices for security measures at all?
So we really focus more on the operating hours. Since we knew they were working with the Santa Monica Police Department and their security assessment and doing walkthroughs on the site, they worked with them to kind of fine-tune that security plan that was submitted in the supplemental report.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'll have some comments about those best practices later, but we can move on for now. That's all from me.
Commissioner Reese?
No questions at this point.
Okay. So just to clarify, I think Commissioner Raskin started to get into this. Is it correct to say, based on the materials that have been provided to us, the security assessment was provided by the Santa Monica Police Department? So, for example, when I look at the recommendation that that there be dividers placed on benches to prevent people from lying down on those benches, that is coming from the Santa Monica Police Department. And then the applicant was responding to those recommendations on its own. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So that came out of their walkthrough on the 20th.
Okay.
The police officer that was in place, and a recommendation came from that.
Okay. And has the planning department ever provided guidance?
Can I also
Sorry?
just add to that as well? Just so that there's no misconception here about kind of what happened is that the application was actually routed to the Santa Monica Police Department. They had no comments on there. The applicant separately reached out to the police department. The police department offers a free service to all residents and businesses in the city to do complimentary security surveys, basically to offer suggestions as to how properties can be better fortified or secured, if you will. So that's the report that was provided to the applicant as part of that complimentary service. The applicant then took some of those suggestions and then came up with proposed conditions. We then reviewed those conditions and included the ones as part of the supplemental staff report, that we thought were appropriate and relevant to the CUP before you. So just wanted to provide that context.
Thank you, Jing. And out of curiosity, has the planning department ever been asked by Santa Monica PD, or has it ever done with Santa Monica PD? Has it ever gone over those types of recommendations that are being offered and offered its perspective, whether planning or building and safety, on the types of recommendations that PD offers to residents and businesses?
We haven't had sort of that global conversation. I will say that this comes up a lot in my role as a zoning administrator when we're looking at fence wall hedge modifications, and residents may ask the police department to come out. I'll say when we review those recommendations, or when people provide their assessments as to what they want to do, I think we look at it in terms of what the city's policies are, planning best practices, that sort of thing. But in terms of a global conversation, no, that's not something that has happened.
Okay, and then we've heard a lot from a lot of comments about the saturation of the area, and you have on page 6 this very one page, long analysis here of what else is in the neighborhood and what's around. The observation is that the applicant is requesting a 24-hour operation. On what basis, therefore, can you speak more about how you made your finding? I see that you've basically suggested that the 1 hour earlier opening than the earliest, Bristol Farms, and the midnight closing, which is 2 hours later than Bristol Farms, Erewhon, Whole Foods, and CVS, represents essentially the finding that it would be more unique during those hours. Can you walk us through a little bit more about your thinking there, just so we all understand? Because we did receive a lot of comments about that.
Yeah, so initially, I believe we had proposed, before they came back with some of these treatments, I think it was 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. We saw that, locations did close a little bit on the earlier side, 10 p.m. at the latest, and the applicant argued that in the area there were workers or people that would want to get food or drink or snacks later at night. So that, coupled with their provision of the security wall, the 8-foot wall around the residential, adjacent to the residential property, and also the other security treatments, we saw that, that allowed us to recommend a later and earlier start.
I see, but it didn't affect it was the function of the start and closing, not the compatibility of the nature of that business with the surrounding neighborhood.
Right, yeah, it was more based off of impacts to the surrounding neighborhood, based off sound and security concerns.
I see. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions before we go to the public or to the applicant? So we'll have the applicant for, Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
I have a quick question. Are we Is this site the only business that's using the whole parking lot? It's only for us. It's not being shared with that adjacent property to the west. Is that correct?
Right, yeah, so that parking lot is for that one commercial building, the 9 tenant spaces that will go in there.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll hear from the applicant for 10 minutes.
I have a question, actually. Forgot.
Oh, sorry.
And it
Commissioner
follows up on what you were saying, Chair Landers. Is saturation a criterion we look for in issuing a CUP? Really don't know the answer.
So what was the question?
Saturation. Is saturation of a particular use a criterion in how we evaluate a CUP request?
Not necessarily saturation, but I think it gives an idea of, compatibility with surrounding uses. It'll show, what types of uses are in the area, what's similar, and like what works.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And let me ask this site one more question along those lines. My understanding of the history of this site is that it was previously a housing opportunity site. There was a proposal for housing. There were strong neighborhood objections to the housing. The proposal was withdrawn, and this commercial development was developed in very close consultation with the neighbors. Does that, in staff's view, lend itself toward more openness to recommending the CUP, the history of that site and the neighbors' engagement or the history of the site?
Yeah, I think the engagement with the neighborhood, I know I received a lot of comments that they had reached out to the community during the development and renovation of the property. So that, that shows that there was a consistent engagement throughout the process.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to the applicant then. 10 minutes.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Greg Fick, representing Cadence Capital Investments. I want to thank you for your time in reviewing this project here tonight. Know it's late, so we'll be as short and quick as possible on our end. I'd like to thank staff for their report and explanation of our project. We are in agreement with the staff report and all conditions except for just condition number 1, which does have a restriction on hours, as we would like to request for the convenience store to operate 24 hours based on the information presented here tonight. Staff just mentioned that sound and security were 2 of those items, and we feel that we've addressed that with our security plan and the sound study that was submitted. Let me share. Okay. And much of this has already been stated by staff, but yes, the original project was, or the original site was a Bank of America, and was renovated to what you see there today. Previously, before Cadence Capital purchased this site, there was a project Century West that was 5 stories, 60 feet high, about 100 apartments, and there was massive opposition against that. So we did consult with the neighbors, and our decision was to not build a project after purchasing it that would maximize the land use capabilities for this site. It was a renovation of the existing 10,000 square foot building. We considered and put $5 million into this building and site as part of an investment. And the proposed use is still a mixture of retail, goods, restaurants, services, as you'll see in the next couple of slides. Again, this is Wilshire Boulevard. It's a commercial corridor, a very long commercial, one of the major commercial thoroughfares. You can see that our site is in line and much smaller in scale than many of the buildings in our area, in our community. And this is the existing parking lot in the back and has been a parking lot for many years. This is the site plan as staff mentioned. Here is the location of the convenience store. Note that the entry and exit will only be from Wilshire Boulevard as well. And the trash enclosure was actually relocated to this position right here as a requirement from RRR as part of the tenant improvement, that the trash enclosure has to be within 10 feet of the property line. I think this gives a better context of our project. So we do have the convenience store right here that is being proposed in front of you today, but we do have many other uses. This yellow square this is Wilshire Boulevard facing right here, is leased out to Oakberry, which is an acai, juice and coffee place. Blue, light blue, and purple are all going to be 4 different food tenants that we're proposing to place in the building. We have a bakery that's in the back facing the parking lot. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different tenants that we're proposing to have here. So this retail component of a convenience store is really just a small piece of what we plan to offer here. The second floor will have 2 tenants as well. We're proposing a small fitness type tenant that would go in Suite J right here, and then likely another food tenant in Suite K. So why a convenience store? One is that we need to have a credit-worthy, stable anchor for this building. Especially in today's economic climate, there are very few credit-worthy tenants. And quite frankly, it's really hard, even right now, even though we have some tenants that are looking at doing tenant improvements, they can't operate in the current pandemic situation and be profitable. This retail convenience store is an essential business that can operate and can provide credit and stability for this building. We anticipate high turnover with the other restaurants that are going to be there, so it also provides stability for us as well. It'll provide much needed foot traffic for the small mom and pop tenants that we're proposing to have here. And it also provides a service for when other stores are closed. There was a mention that some of the other stores closed earlier. This is a convenient way to pick up goods and services while other stores are closed. There are also there's 2 hospitals within a mile. There are commuters, even though there are other 7-Elevens that may be close to the hospital as well. There will be commuters that come in and out from the hospital, whether they're on their shift in late night and they want to go to a safe place that they can go to, and that's what we're going to provide for them. As mentioned, we don't have alcohol at this location. We have a noise study that has been prepared for this project that indicates that there are not any impacts with the use of this convenience store. And our only request is for the commission to consider to modify condition of approval number 1 to allow 24-hour operations. As mentioned, we have had quite a bit of outreach for this project. Early consultation when we first were designing the project to be a multi-tenant building. We responded to all the residents who directly contacted us during this process. We held neighborhood meeting on October 6th. Based on that meeting, we also met with Santa Monica PD, as mentioned, and there were neighbors that attended that as well. There are great suggestions that were made during that meeting, and that's where the security plan that is in front of you today, that's where that came about. We know that you're going to hear opposition for this project, and significant opposition, and we respect everybody's opinion. We want to be great neighbors to everyone. We know that the main concerns are going to be crime, loitering, traffic safety, and market saturation, and there's been a call for the neighborhood to respond to that. So in light of that, this is a commercial thoroughfare. This is a mixed-use boulevard zone. It allows commercial uses. On October 7th, what you'll hear tonight is that the other 7-Elevens in the city operate and they have a ton of crime. Well, on October 7th, the commission reviewed an expansion and a conditional use approval for alcohol for a 24-hour store located at 1600 Santa Monica Boulevard. There was not one vote of opposition for that at that point in time. If there was crime then and security issues, then they would have surely been mentioned that night. And I think part of that is because there is a security guard that helps with that. And they have a security plan, much like what we'd be proposing on our project as well. We believe that we do have a robust security plan. We do plan on having a physical security guard there to be present to address any issues with loitering, crime, and it will solve that problem. Loitering will not be tolerated in the parking lot. We're very conscious of that. We've agreed to all the parking lot recommendations from Santa Monica PD. Traffic safety, delivery trucks will not be going into the neighborhood. They will be coming once a day as part of this project into the site. They will be smaller scale trucks, and they will enter the parking lot, circulate, and go back out onto Wilshire. And then just to answer market saturation, this is a different and unique site. Again, it doesn't have alcohol. It does not need alcohol to survive economically. 7-Eleven is going in a different direction by providing different local type goods, healthier foods, different coffee bar, different things. And they do extensive market demand research. And it's really important to them to not cannibalize the other stores that they have. And by doing their research, they believe that there is a demand for this use at this location. We went through the security plan. I know we have limited time, so here to answer any questions with regards to that. But again, wanted to note that the entry and exit will be at the front on Wilshire Boulevard. And then the only difference is with our plan versus Santa Monica PD, they did mention a security arm at the entrance for the driveways. We're open to exploring that. We're not against that. A bike rack location, we are open to relocating that if need be. Landscaping, there wasn't a specific mention for the landscaping, but open to making any changes that may be required as well. We already have exterior LED lighting, but open to making any changes with Santa Monica PD. And then the security guard. So we're open to a virtual security guard, as mentioned by Santa Monica PD, and preference is to have a security guard from 12 to 5. We think that
Thank you. That has been 10 minutes.
And here to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Very much. Let's start with Commissioner Reese.
I guess talk to me a little bit about your loading. We have some it seems like we're allowing loading till 11 at night. Is that something you would actually need?
Yeah, I think I heard your question. Technically, per code, we do not need a loading zone for this particular use. We do plan on using a remote loading within the parking lot, but big trucks can't circulate that parking lot. It's not physically possible for them to do that. So there will be smaller box type trucks that will be loading, and we agree with the conditions of approval for the hours that staff has recommended for those loading hours.
Okay. I'm sorry. Am I still having audio problems? Is that what you're having trouble?
Yes.
Well, I don't know that I can overcome that. But my question was actually, do you need to load until 11 p.m.?
Oh, sorry about that. No, I mean, what happens is I think we could agree to 10, but if that would help. There are different times, and the loading happens because they go to different stores, and there's fresh deliveries. So it is sporadic during the day, but I'm sure that we could, if it needed to be 10 to meet demands, we could do that.
And why is it so important to have 24-hour service?
It's part of it's just part of the model of the operations. Every 7-Eleven that operates has 24 hours, and it's to provide services. And there's not traditional working from 8 to 5 has really changed in the market and economy now. You have Lyft, Uber drivers, you have people at all hours of the night working jobs, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, just to survive right now, especially during the pandemic. Even without it, the landscape's changed, but that has been their model and what they need. It's part of what they need, and it's part of our obligation to deliver it.
Okay, I think those are my questions for right now. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Raskin.
Thank you. So I know that we have parking requirements in our code, and I know that you might need the parking space for loading purposes, and I also know that it might require other entitlements, but I'm curious if at any point in this process you considered alternative uses of that parking lot, either as a patio or some other purpose.
Yeah, we're limited on what we can do. It's a residential zone. Subzone, so we really can't do that. So we are maxed out at our parking, and it's essentially a parking lot.
I guess my question is, you never thought of applying for, say, a major modification to reuse the parking in some other way or variance?
No. We the goal of it is to utilize that parking for the building.
Okay. And so if I understood our conversation correctly earlier, the security plan was largely created by you in consultation with SMPD. Is that right?
Absolutely. So there was a meeting that took place on site, and both a couple neighbors and Santa Monica PD expressed different items that they thought would be beneficial to enhance security, and we agree. Like you said, we're willing to work with everyone to really make this a successful site. And it was in consultation with them, and essentially we're in agreement with their recommendations.
Okay. Yeah, I might come back and ask you later after we've heard from the public about some of the items that might be considered hostile architecture, but we can get back to that later.
Sure.
And that's it for me.
Okay, Commissioner Pastor.
Thank you. I'd actually like to push a little bit harder on the loading hours. I think that those are pretty long and too long loading hours. I have worked on a lot of projects where we've had limited loading hours, and so I think it is reasonable to do so. In particular, I think 7 a.m. on weekends is just really early, and I'd like to see that move till at least 8 a.m. on weekends. And you may not have any deliveries on weekends, and that would be ideal, but I think from a neighbor perspective. And I would even say like 9 p.m. So I wanted to kind of hear your feedback about that. So just to be clear, that would be like changing to 8 a.m., like no loading before 8 a.m. on weekends and no later than 9 p.m. on every day.
I'm sure that we could work with the 8. Ideally, we would have at least till 10 p.m. But I'm on the weekends. I'm sure we could accommodate that to 8 a.m. If it meant approval of the project, then I'm sure we would consider it. But for their operations, we're respectful of the neighbors that are right behind us too. So absolutely. Yeah, okay. And that would be in the parking lot.
Well, I guess that's a question. I mean, if you're doing loading on Wilshire, I don't care how late you do it. It's just in the parking lot.
Yeah. So I'm sure we could work with that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I have for right now.
Okay, Commissioner Lambert.
Okay, thank you. I want to follow up on Commissioner Reese's question. I'm curious. I know the 24-hour thing is your model, but it's just hard, and maybe because I'm not someone who works at night to imagine that you have a lot of business between midnight and 5 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'd say to that is that if it didn't make economic sense and they didn't have the business and there wasn't a need for that, they wouldn't be operating for 24 hours.
That's true. And I want your opinion. If I were out of Tylenol and I had to go somewhere like at 2 in the morning and I went to your store, don't you think it's more likely that I would park on the street and walk in rather than a parking lot?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because you would definitely go to the closest the entrance.
I mean, I'd be much safer on Wilshire walking into the store, and so I suspect that a lot of people would do that in the middle of the night.
We do anticipate that that's what would happen. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it will. The other question I asked your representative today is whether you would be willing to, the building, I assume you're involved with the building, would put up no loitering signs on the property.
Yeah, absolutely. That wouldn't be an issue at all.
And then cite the municipal code that disallows that. And then finally, 7-Eleven does not have a real good neighbor reputation in Santa Monica. And we did allow the one a few weeks ago, and there was no opposition. But when I looked at the police calls for that one and the one in 7th and Wilshire, they're huge. I mean, it's just really, I don't know what kind of corporate responsibility, if any, there is for 7-Eleven, but 7th and Wilshire is absurd and it's a mess. So I don't know how involved 7-Eleven corporate is in the operation of these individual sites. How are you going to ensure to us that this doesn't happen with the store in your building?
Yeah, well, I mean, that part of that may potentially be with alcohol. It is part of that, and that may contribute to that. And there's a condition that we're not going to be doing that here. Look, at the end of the day, we need this to be successful, this building, and we're not going to tolerate crime at this location because it's going to hurt the other businesses that we need to be successful. So it's just something that we're not going to tolerate. Whether we have security that helps handle that as well, I think we're going to be able to make that work, and it's not going to be detrimental to the public, really.
I'd like to add something. This is Ira Handelman. Also, this is going to be a corporate store, we were told. This is not going to be a franchise store. So yes, corporate is going to be directly involved in this store.
So how is that going to be different?
Well, I don't know all the inner workings, but it's not going to go out to a franchisee, so it'll be under direct control of corporate. That's what we were told. Okay,
well, that's good news. The other final question I have is, and I think I read somewhere that you had agreed to the police department or the neighbors' request that you design the benches on the property such that people can't lie down on them. Is that somewhere in here that I...
Yeah, one of the things that is very difficult in today's world, and I know it's a commissioner, in not too distant past, you designed buildings with architectural improvements and open space and made everybody comfortable. And then with a lot of the social changes, you're going back and forth. The city wants one thing, and then police tell you another thing, and the community tells you something. To everything from defensive landscaping to putting barriers on benches so people can't sleep. We're caught in the middle. We're just trying to respond to community concerns and the recommendations of the Santa Monica Police Department.
Well, don't you think it's likely that everybody would agree people should not be sleeping on those benches?
I agree, Commissioner Lambert, but I'm just saying, you have a security team from the police. They recommended it. The community also recommended it for their input. So we're just trying to, we have enough opposition, even though we've agreed with everybody. We're just trying to agree with people and do the best we can.
Welcome to Santa Monica. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Fresco. No questions. Yes,
no,
questions?
I have questions. I was turning on my mic.
Okay.
So how many people constitute a rush of customers between 12 midnight and 5 a.m.? Is there such a thing as a rush, or is it always a trickle, but it's steady enough to justify? What's it like?
I think it's more of a trickle than a rush, is what but providing a need for the community and for commuters, going up and down Wilshire. But yeah, I don't. I mean, you're probably looking at 3, 4 people, 5 people in an hour, something like that. It's not.
Yeah, Commissioner Raskin, the other thing is that 7-Eleven as a brand wants to be consistent in all of its stores. So they try to maintain the 24 hours in all of them. So if somebody drives by, they expect it to be open. So a lot of it is their branding and their corporate policies.
Okay, so on Wilshire Boulevard in front, is there, where there's meters, is there overnight parking? Or is that not allowed? Is it just always metered parking all night long?
I don't know exactly if it's not allowed overnight. I don't think you can just have, I don't know. We could look into that. I don't know. I have that answer.
Curious. And in terms of this corporate control situation that Mr. Handelman just mentioned, is that a good thing or a bad thing? When it's a franchise owner, isn't that a small business owner whose life depends on making this work versus a corporate enterprise that it's just one pea in a bag of peas? What is that really an advantage to us?
Commissioner, it goes both ways. Sometimes people complain that franchisees have too much control and are not regulated enough. So corporate comes in, at least they're more responsible. So it can go either way. But I think having a corporate store, I think would be a good thing because they have much more at stake and you can go directly to them as opposed a lot with franchisees. Sometimes there's problems with them.
I see.
Commissioner Fresco, to your question, I believe the one we approved 2 weeks ago was a franchisee, not corporate.
Yeah, and it was actually, that had a lot of support because so many of the neighbors liked that guy. And they knew him. So that was why he had so much support to expand.
Well, you're gonna have a manager on site, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Those are my questions for now.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
No questions.
Okay. I'm gonna jump in here. What happens, give us the scenario if we approve this project with the loading restrictions that Commissioner Pastor talked about. We leave you to your own devices with respect to your architecture out front, but we say you can't operate 24 hours a day. What are you going to do?
At this point,
go ahead, Dyer.
No, at this point, Commissioner, we have an obligation to the tenant to try to go for 24, but we do want to walk away tonight if we can get an approval. And then if we can't get it through the process, then it gives my client a lot more leverage to possibly renegotiate, whether it's a 7-Eleven or someone else. But he's under an obligation to try to go for 24. But if you decide to go with the staff recommendations, we would respect it, but we would also have the option if we felt to appeal.
You would have the option to appeal. What if you had a scenario where you didn't get 24 hours now, but you could build up going back to Commissioner Fresco's point about the support for the fellow from 2 weeks ago was that he was an existing operator who had a track record, who had relationships in the community, and then he came in and said, I want to expand, I want to do more. That was not a difficult call because there were so many customers who, we didn't have the security problems at that location, and we had customers coming in saying, he's a part of the neighborhood. You're coming in, you've done good outreach, which we understand, but you're coming in new, and you're leading with a tenant that is controversial, and a request that is controversial. What's your runway? What would your openness be to, taking the 12 midnight, the 5 a.m. to 12 midnight now, and then coming back in a year, when you've got a track record to ask for 24 hours?
Yeah. I think that could be an option down the road. But again, our client has to try based on, I've also looked at the elections in Santa Monica. Even if I think we appealed, the chances are we're going to end up having to live with the restriction of hours, and then it's up to our client to negotiate with 7-Eleven. They may agree that it's worth going with what they can get, and then come back in a year or two when they build up a track record. They may decide to do a franchisee if that's more important. But for right now, we have to ask. That's just the responsibility. But if in the end of the day we get that, then my client goes back and negotiates with 7-Eleven. And if they don't agree, he'd have to bring in another convenience store. But he has to, obligation-wise, give it a try.
So you have, at the moment, you have either you feel or you actually have legally the obligation to make a good faith effort to get a 24-hour approval. But if you don't, you do have a path forward to making this site economically viable.
In today's market, it's hard to say. With retailers, you will know how difficult it is, but my client will try. That's all I can say. I can't guarantee it, but he can try. But right now, as everybody knows, with all the empty stores, there's not a lot of people lining up, which is one of the reasons. Again, I want to go back to one quick point. He didn't maximize, and the community loved my client I know there were other people wish we did do the housing, but the neighborhood came out in force, like they've come out tonight on us, but he's trying to make it work. And it's a tough economic climate out there. So in the end of the day, we still like to walk away with an approval. We have an option to try to go all the way. If we can't, then he'd have to negotiate with 7-Eleven or someone else. They may walk and we get another convenience store, but I can't. The retail business is a whole other world.
Understood. Thank you very much. So if there are no other questions, we can open the public hearing. Same rules as before. Want to make sure that everybody understands that they have 2 minutes. When you finish speaking, please do not hang up, as we may have questions for you. So you will be disconnected when we're ready to move on to the next speaker. And with that, the system is working so far tonight. So let's keep going.
Thank you, Chair. Quick update before we begin. We do have 21 registered callers for this item. So far, we have about 14 that we could see in the queue. So just expect anywhere between 14 and 21 as we proceed. And our first caller is Charles Berman. Charles, thanks for your patience. You are being taken off mute. You are live in the meeting, Charles, and you have 2 minutes to speak. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Charles Berman. I live on Stanford Street in Santa Monica. I'm an attorney. I've put in a written complaint. I addressed the written complaint on behalf of residents in California, but the complaint is essentially my own complaint, which I compiled really from reading all the oppositions to this development. And I find that those oppositions, which now are over 200 pages in the public record, tell a striking story. It tells a striking story which is very, very different to what the applicant has said and extremely different to the staff report. I find that the staff report, sadly, is misleading and incomplete. I think that they have indicated that the applicants in this area have really not complained about the store, and I think 200 pages of complaint tells a totally different story. As to the saturation, I did address it in my paper, but I find it quite amazing that the staff did a linear saturation map, basically 0.8 of a mile from the area of where the site is. Anything that is going to be a fair saturation would surely be radial. Look at the Santa Monica Police Report. They did a radial study. If you do a radial study, you will pick up Ralph's, which is a 24, 2 or 3 or 4 Ralph's stores. You'll pick up CVS, which is a 24-hour store, and 26 in Santa Monica. I just find it amazing that that truncated assessment by the staff is being put forward as gospel in this thing. I find also amazing that no traffic analysis has been made. I drive often across Berkeley, Wilshire, and that intersection. It's a jog intersection. It's very difficult to cross that intersection. It's difficult to go east to west or west to east. Where was the traffic assessment? I find the issue of noise and the evaluation of noise also very short in its assessment. When people are coming in to open and close the store. It's going to go beyond the hours that the staff
Thank you. 2 minutes is up.
Thank you. And Mr. Berman, I have a question for you out of clarity because you submitted public comment in an unusual format. Just wish for you to clarify for the record what you describe as a complaint with additional signatures. You did submit that as public comment. I don't want the public to misunderstand the nature of what you submitted. Is that correct? It was these are the views that you wished us to consider. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the two other statements were declarations from people living in the Santa Monica Boulevard area complaining about the other issues of 24-hour stores. But these are my comments, which kind of is a summation of what I've seen as problems.
Thank you very much. I've been asked by staff to... yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Commissioner Lambert.
Mr. Berman?
Yes, I'm here.
Would the neighborhood be opposed if the store closed between midnight and 5?
Yes, I believe it'd be totally...
So you don't want the store at all?
I don't want the store at all. I believe it's a thin end of a wedge, which is not needed.
Okay.
I'll follow up, Mr. Berman. You do understand that there is a commercial retail site built there, yes?
I understand there's commercial and commercial, but this particular tenant is a tenant of extremists that people don't like. I think fundamentally, if there was what the applicant referred to as basically a wish list, they're looking for other stores, a bakery or something like this. No one says that anyone's going to come. I don't think the neighborhood would object to a bona fide commercial existence there. They're looking at this particular 24-hour facility. I am looking at it as something which has never been, no one has asked the neighbors in this area whether that kind of store is available or needed for this area. That's what I find frankly appalling.
Thank you very much. I've been asked by staff to make an announcement, which is that there are some attendees who are in the Blue Jeans app or on the website using the moderator chat to make comments on the proceedings. We really request that the moderator chat be limited to technical issues or procedural questions. And I want to reiterate that commissioners do not see anything you write. We don't see any of your questions. We don't see any of your comments. In fact, I, as chair, can only communicate with one or two people on staff. And my questions procedurally have to be relayed. So if you're chatting substantively, please know that that is not what this chat is for. We'll move on to the next caller.
Thank you. Our next caller is Annette Tatum. Annette, you are off of mute and you are live in the meeting. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Clay Tatum. Annette and I are here together. We're husband and wife. We live a block and a half from the location on Franklin Street. I am a builder and developer in the city of Santa Monica for the last 30 years. My business is here. I have a lot of experience with this commission. And the applicant respectfully did not meet the threshold for your consideration. The study that was submitted, particularly regarding the other stores, to take a straight line down Wilshire Boulevard instead of the radius that the previous guy was talking about, didn't consider Walgreens, BevMo, the other existing 7-Eleven stores for sure. We know what the one down on 7th has done to Reed Park, Target store in Wilshire, 2 Ralph stores, the CVS is 24 hours. All of those should have been considered. It's just a misrepresentation. And then the traffic analysis, as we know, this commission approved. Berkeley has a roundabout now 1 block north of this store, and it has median islands because it's a shortcut street with a double line all the way through. It's a very difficult street. It's a very difficult corner because it offsets. Arguably the most difficult intersection on Wilshire in Santa Monica because of that offset, and there's barricades where you can't turn left there. There is no frontage parking in front of this store. There's a bus stop the entire frontage. So the idea that people are going to park on Wilshire and walk in, they will probably park and unload to stock the store illegally, but there's no parking there. There's also a bus stop at the opposite corner on the other side of Wilshire. And the major problem for the Northeast Homeowners Association is that the crime rate, and the representative for 7-Eleven was saying they want continuity with the other stores. Well, certainly, if that's what they want, we know what the other stores in Santa Monica 7-Eleven stores represent. That back parking lot that's dark like that, whether or not it's lit, we know the enforceability of whatever your CUP.
Thank you. That has been your 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Sheila McWilliams. Sheila, you are off of mute and you are live in the meeting. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for this time. Good evening. It's been an interesting 24 hours, so let's get to it. In regards to the proposed 7-Eleven, I am hereby against that tenancy and usage for this building. Firstly, as we discussed, the neighborhood is already oversaturated with markets and 7-Eleven locations. There are 3 7-Elevens in Santa Monica: 16 Santa Monica Boulevard, 630 Wilshire, 1865 Lincoln. There's one 3-minute drive away at 11656 Wilshire in West LA, yet another one only 2 minutes away at 1225 Santa Monica Boulevard. That's 5 7-Elevens already within a short drive. We've spoken about numerous bonds and CVS's. We do not need this in our neighborhood. It's been often reported, even by the Santa Monica Police Department, these types of 24-hour markets are magnets for crime. I ask that each of you go on the reference 7-Elevens I just noted, Yelp them, Google review, read the comments about loitering, harassment, filth, panhandling, drug use, which occur at these locations. There are condos, homes, apartment buildings, which have a great deal of kids who live, play, work, and take the bus to school in this area. We do not need this in our neighborhood. The developer, who ironically represents 7-Elevens throughout California, has intimated that 24-hour business is their business model for which they cannot stray from. This is not true. The following 7-Elevens have limited hours. West LA on Wilshire, 11656, closes at 10 p.m. 11075 West Olympic, closes at midnight. 818 West 7th Street, closes at 2 a.m. 7750 Starling, closes at 11. 1501 University closes at midnight. These are just a few samples of the hour limitations. If the city, against our wishes, approves this use, we vehemently are against the 24-hour setup. This location must adhere to limited hours and abide by Bristol Farms hours, which they were made to do upon their conditional use. They close at 11 p.m. each night. If approved, this location must match that. I strongly propose that
Thank you. That has been your 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Dr. Lauren Eric Krieger. Dr. Krieger, you are now off of mute and you're live in the meeting. Welcome. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, Commissioners. Thank you for having us on. Appreciate you hearing from the community and listening to the residents. I think it's pretty clear at this point that there is nobody who wants any activity on that corner beyond the time of midnight to some reasonable time in the morning. I think it's rather ironic that the company that wants to be put into that place is 7-Eleven, which the hours would be 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So the overnight time is actually the time that we don't want any activity there. If you look at any of the other corners that have 7-Elevens in play, all you see is loitering, you see people congregating, and crime fanning out. So I happen to be a orthopedic surgeon and a traumatologist. My business is in the valley, and I drive about 5 miles to get to my hospital. And what I see is about 5 or 6 7-Elevens on the way. Between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, all you see is congregating cars and people loitering in the parking lots. And I'm sure that at the time that they were approved for building, they were told that loitering was going to be put under control, and it just never happens. So please prevent this kind of business from operating overnight during the daytime hours. They want to run the 7-Eleven there. That's fine. I just think that the hours at this point make no sense for this residence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Mark Abraham. Mark, you are off mute and you're live in the meeting. Welcome. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the commissioners. Listen, any logic tells you this is madness. Any place that tells you about how much security they need to start off, we're going to have security guards. We don't have security guards walking up and down these streets. I lived here for 24 years. I can't think of one time in the middle of the night I thought to myself, I've got to go out to 7-Eleven and get a Slurpee. If you want to buy a Tylenol, like one of the commissioners mentioned, you're not going into a 7-Eleven. You're going to CVS, which is 4 minutes away. Because you know what? At 7-Eleven, they're over going to charge you. They talk about serving people in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. How many people are getting up in Santa Monica at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning, leaving and deciding, oh, you know what? I'll get a 7-Eleven cup of coffee. That's not going to happen. People aren't buying 7-Eleven for their coffee. They go to Starbucks to get their coffee. The saturation thing is important. I don't agree with it. We should have it anyway. We should have something else in there. I'm sorry that it's a difficult time. Everybody's suffering. All kinds of retail establishments are suffering. But we've got the saturation I won't go through. Take a look at the map. And by the way, Bristol Farms is open till 11. CVS is open all the time. We don't need a 7-Eleven in there. And now we're talking about, well, you know what? We're going to fix it. We got benches that people can't lie down on. That's a great situation. Every part of this is kind of crazy. By the way, this is a neighborhood. Yes, it's Wilshire Boulevard, but it is a neighborhood. Right down the street, I live on Berkeley 24 years. We're a neighborhood. We know our neighbors. And going the other way in the south, lots of kids, lots of people. Those places are not just Wilshire Boulevard. And also, as another gentleman pointed out, Wilshire Boulevard right there, that's a funky area, a funky traffic zone. And I've seen a lot of, fender benders. The cops will tell you that because it jogs. It's really complicated. So we're talking about putting a place in for 24-hour 7-Eleven, which has by the way, the reason they don't have people there, they talk about how many people are there and the rush was a good question. That's why they have crime, because there isn't anybody there. So they know they can go in and there's not going to be anybody hanging around. And they got one guy behind a bulletproof
Thank you. That has been your 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Brian Hunt. Brian, you're now off mute and you're live in the meeting. You have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate your time and realize everyone's tired and Commissioner Lambert might be a little cranky. I'm a longtime resident, homeowner, parent of small children. Really important issue to my family and our neighbors. 7-Eleven is absolutely incompatible with the residential College Streets neighborhood. As everyone has said tonight, it's going to negatively impact the families and children who live here. I read the staff reports. I read the Santa Monica Police report. I read the updated safety plan. These were all designed to protect the store, not the community. And nowhere in any of these pages was the vagrant effect addressed. We all know these stores are magnets for loitering, homeless, trash, violence, and crime. The commissioners have seen these photos, but I just want to call them out for everyone in the meeting tonight. Last Sunday afternoon, I drove through the 7-Eleven in the 600 block of Wilshire. I couldn't have set it up better. I got a picture of a man urinating near the front door, 2 unmasked men smoking crack or meth while defeating the architectural features to prevent loitering, and then a man lying in the landscape next to his pile of trash. I also took a quick look at the Santa Monica Police log for the first 3 days of November for the 600 block of Wilshire. Really quickly, 11-3, lewd activity. 11-3, disturbance of a business. 11-2, assault with a deadly weapon. 11-2, citizen flag. 11-1, 72-hour cycle. 11-1, citizen flag. 11-1, disturbance of a business. The additional cost of law enforcement alone should cancel this application. So, as the commissioners also noted, there's a Bristol Farm right across the street with all the same products and a live security officer. I don't know what remote security is. It sounds ridiculous. Please reject this unnecessary, unwanted, and inversely incompatible application for all the residents who want to peacefully enjoy this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is Barbara White. Barbara, you are now off mute. You're live in the meeting. You have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to start off with the fact that, with all due respect, the neighbors were not consulted about having a 24-hour convenient market. We were consulted about a 5-story building, which of course people were not happy about because all the buildings around there are simply 2 stories. I just want to say this is a terrible idea. There's absolutely no upside for those who live in the neighborhood. There are families all up and down the street. We have all seen the consequences of having 24-hour stores selling lottery tickets, cigarettes, not to mention alcohol. And I know they say they're not bringing in alcohol now, but that of course is always something that they're going to appeal at some point. These things tend to encourage vagrancy, which doesn't contribute to the safe neighborhood that we have all worked so hard for. This would affect us all deeply. This would change the whole tone of the neighborhood. It would affect the property values for those that own their residences and the feeling of safety for everyone. I'm confused about this idea of we'll just put in another convenience store. Are there no other strong renters that you can consider? There was a Starbucks that did great when it was in Bristol Farms. Maybe they would be interested in renting something. It seems like the neighbors are being given short shrift, and it's really not fair in the way this is being put through. Let's see. I just also am really upset about this idea of neighborhood engagement that they've been engaging, and I understand that they say that they're doing all their best, but frankly, this was just something that we heard, word of mouth, that we just heard what it was. First, we thought it was some kind of thing, but we never knew, and then we had to discover that it was 7-Eleven.
Thank you. That has been 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Matthew Sachs. Matthew, you are now off mute and you are live in the meeting. You have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, guys. I guess I don't have to explain it, but it seems like the whole community is against it. You've got to turn it down. But more importantly, you guys need to analyze that intersection. It's been a problem for years. I live north of Wilshire, and everybody from Centinela down to Yale has to come to that intersection to cross or go left or go east on Wilshire. It's all cocked up at all times of the day. And that parking lot, back before they did the construction, was a source of the problem too, because people pulling out of that parking lot trying to go north on Berkeley block the southbound, and then it blocks it all the way, the southbound all the way through, north of Wilshire. It's a problem. We've got all these streets here that don't line up, and that's the only intersection there. And to think you're going to put a 7-Eleven there where, I mean, come on, who's ever heard of a 7-Eleven where the parking lot is in the rear? It's just a joke. That's a joke. Please, obviously we've heard every reason why we shouldn't do it, just for crime and that the community's against it. But the parking and the traffic needs to be analyzed for that intersection. It needs to be improved, no matter who goes in that space. But for sure, please reject that. I'll leave you early. How's that? Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Thank you. I have a question for staff before we go on to the next caller. What is the status? We're hearing this is the second or third comment about the Wilshire corridor. What is the status of the Wilshire safety study for this part of town? Has it been implemented there or not?
Jane, do you know about this? Is this something I'm guessing this is something handled by the mobility division?
Yeah, it is. I'm not certain of. I think they're moving forward with some pieces of implementation. I'm not sure if maybe David can speak more about the status of that.
We don't have to take it up now, but it's so this we have not implemented the Wilshire safety study. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's important. Because we're hearing these complaints and we spent some time on this. Okay, thank you. We'll keep going.
Our next caller is Susan Bracey. Susan, you are now off mute and you're live in the meeting. You have 2 minutes.
Susan Bracey, yes. Hi. I am a long-term 20-year resident of Santa Monica, raised 3 kids here. We went through Santa Monica schools, and I'm a homeowner and taxpayer in Santa Monica. And I strongly, strongly oppose this development. I think it's just wrong for the community. Nobody in the community wants this type of store, 7-Eleven, in our community. Nobody's asking for it except for the developer. And of course, they're motivated by wanting to put it there for their own financial benefit. I ask that this commission and you guys who are working for us, the taxpayer and community, that you listen to us. You don't listen to the developer because obviously they're motivated by the fact that they want to put a 7-Eleven there because it's a very stable tenant and it's the best tenant for them. But the thing is what's best for Santa Monica community? What do the neighbors want? The neighbors do not want a 7-Eleven there. I haven't stepped foot, nor do I know any of my neighbors who have stepped foot in a 7-Eleven in over 20 years. Everyone that I see, I'm afraid to go in, and I'll go to a CVS or go somewhere else to some other place if I need to get something for convenience. I haven't been in a 7-Eleven for 20 years. So my point is that nobody wants it except the developer. The commissioners need to listen to this. You saw what happened with the city council. We turned over to city council. We're going to turn over to city council with committee members who don't want all of this overdevelopment. Carrie said that it is compatible with the community. The 7-Eleven, it's not. It's not compatible. It's going to cheapen our community, cheapen that area, and of course it's going to bring crime and attract homeless people to it. As you know, everybody else said that as well. And I strongly ask the commission to listen to the neighbors and listen to the people who live here and pay taxes here, and don't listen to the developers.
Thank you. That's 2 minutes.
Listen to.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Alexandria Dilks Andola. Alexandria, you are off mute and you are live in the meeting. Welcome. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I lived on Berkeley between Arizona and Wilshire before moving to my current residence, which is connected to the well-lit CVS parking lot on 26th and Santa Monica Boulevard. I am here to tell you what my experience has been like living next to a 24-hour parking lot. My family has been disturbed by car alarms, fights, unstable people, and loud music on a weekly basis. There are homeless people stationed in the parking lot day and night, including this one man who likes to stand outside of my 12-year-old son's bedroom window and scream profanities for hours at a time. My family has been subjected to drug use, public urination, looting, and violence just by opening our windows. I've called the business as well as the police on many occasions, and nothing changes. The 7-Eleven applicant says they'll hire a security guard and take other steps to make sure that they don't negatively impact the neighborhood. Well, I challenge them to take those steps at the 7-Elevens in operation in our area, including 2 on Wilshire. And to answer your question about the parking meters on Wilshire and Berkeley, they are in operation from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Darren Bodie. Darren, you are off mute and you're live in the meeting. Welcome. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. And you got my name right on the first try.
Good.
Bodie's not typical. Anyway, I think most of the points that I'm going to make have already been made tonight. Just hope that you can take in what the community is saying to you. We don't need a 24-hour store here. This is a family neighborhood. I've heard, the hospital gets brought up as one of the things that's driving the need, and there's the CVS and 7-Eleven is already within. There's multiple locations within a mile of the hospital. That doesn't make any sense. The engagement with the neighborhood, the only engagement around the 24 hours and having the 7-Eleven here has all been a reaction, after the fact and trying to sort of kind of placate the residents and trying to kind of settle people down. I am not aware of any sort of advance notice that was made in regards to having a 24-hour store on that corner. I think there's got to be other tenants, other anchor tenants besides a 24-hour store that is not accepted by the community. I think there's got to be other options. I don't know what sort of restaurants we're looking to get into that space with a 7-Eleven as a neighbor. It doesn't bode well to me. And yeah, I mean, we've raised our son here on Berkeley. We're just catty corner away from that parking lot.
Thank you. That has been 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Emily Krumke. Emily, you're off mute and you're live in the meeting. You have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Hello, thank you, commissioners, for listening to us this evening. I live on Stanford Street, and I also strongly oppose the 7-Eleven. I'd just like to say I don't visit shopping centers that have 7-Elevens. There's a taco place I like over at the Bundy area, the Bundy 7-Eleven, and my husband has to go pick up the food because he doesn't feel safe with me going there, and I don't feel safe going there. So I wouldn't feel safe going to any of these other tenants in this building that's proposed by the developers. I also want to point out, I just did a quick internet search, and I found a couple important things. Number one, Ralph's, which is a half a mile away down the street, is open from 5 a.m. to 2 a.m., which is a more extensive time than is proposed by the 7-Eleven and is certainly nearby. So any claim that it's necessary for the purposes of essential workers, et cetera, late night people, is just null and void. The other thing I found is I found this developer's name on a lobbyist registration sheet for the city of Santa Monica, and I found that they seem to be developing not only this property, but also the Jerry's property and also one of the properties next to Subway across the street. And so I wonder what other proposals they're going to bring to this committee and what other types of businesses they're going to try to put in our neighborhood. Seems to be a Colorado corporation. And that's very troublesome because businesses need to serve our neighborhood. They're for us. They're here for us, and we don't want them here. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next caller, and this appears to be our last caller in the queue who is registered. So we have Judy Rothman-Rofe. Judy, you are now off of mute and you're live in the meeting. You have 2 minutes for comments.
Hi, thank you. I've lived on Berkeley for 27 years and in Santa Monica for 40 years. I used to live near the near the Wilshire and 7th 7-Eleven, and I was a victim of pickpocketing there when I first moved to Santa Monica, so I haven't really gone back to 7-Eleven. I agree with my neighbors that it's an illogical choice for our neighborhood, whether 24 hours or not. We hope the complex would offer cool restaurants, interesting real estate opportunities, not an edgy corporate entity that's so associated with crime that the developers reached out to security on their own. And to respond to their pitch, we don't get hospital workers or Uber drivers looking for Pringles at 3 a.m. here. There is a 7-Eleven on Santa Monica right near both of the hospitals, so if they really are dying to go there, that's where they can go. The developers admitted they needed this kind of tenant because of credit reasons, and that's not a good reason for our community. The language on the slide about the traffic came from my email. It takes 2 light cycles to get through the intersection north to south. I was, when my kids learned how to drive, I was crazy about them driving through that intersection because it's not straight. You have to veer off. And I wasn't just concerned about delivery vehicles like they put in the slide. It's the individual customers going in and coming out all day and all night. We're going to see accidents, increased crime, cheapening of a cool new building because the developers can't get another tenant. And I don't think that's a good enough reason. So thank you.
Thank you. And is that, we're clear with the list?
That concludes the list.
All right, let's hear from the applicant. 3 minutes.
Commissioners, thank you very much. There's not much I can say. I respect everyone. Everybody's been sincere. I just want to reinforce one fact. My client is not the greedy developer that some people try to make it. He came to the community and listened to them, and he built the project way below the maximum. And the community loved him for that. I go back to, we live in tough times. He's trying to get a credit-worthy tenant. I think we've answered all the questions we can, and we look to you to evaluate the situation and make the best decision. Thank you.
Hey, let's open it up for, are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Lambert. Well, let me do what I've been doing consistently tonight. So let's start with Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi and go forward alphabetically. Do you have questions for the applicant, Mario?
No questions.
Okay, Commissioner Fresco? Questions?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is exactly a question you can answer, but I'm going to throw it out there. It seems like the biggest problem with 7-Eleven is image and reputation and, you know, is there something that 7-Eleven is, I mean, are you guys picking this up that everyone is scared to go to a corner where there's a 7-Eleven? And is there something, I mean, I don't really know what, I mean, it's certainly not in our purview to act on that, but it just seems like that's the big elephant in the room is the reputation, and I don't know how we can handle it.
Well, Commissioner, one of the things that makes it different, and we do listen, is that this store is dry. One of the big complaints about 7-Elevens is the loitering and the drinking, and one of the biggest things at this store in respect to the neighborhood is not going to sell alcohol, which takes away a lot of the potential problems that people talk about. Second of all, I think the setting is very different than a lot of 7-Elevens. This building is something that is, I think, a well-done, well-designed building, and I think that in itself will increase the image of the store and the type of customers that come in. Greg, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just that the perception actually that, you know, I think that there is a concerted effort to change that perception as well. And yes, there were many people that may not want to patronize this particular business or this tenant space within the building, but there's going to be plenty of other people, a lot of people that would, and may not speak for everyone. So that's what I would say. But the perception is trying to provide more local products, healthier snacks, goods, fresh fruit, produce, salads, sandwiches, that kind of thing. And that's where they're going. And I think you'll continue to see that. And when you go to newer 7-Elevens, you'll notice that.
So is there something different about your branding that telegraphs that so that the average noisy person who wants to get beer at 3 a.m. or whatever it is going to know that they shouldn't bother stopping at this 7-Eleven?
Well, part of it, Commissioner, is the building itself. I mean, I think this is a beautiful building. And I haven't seen too many 7-Elevens on the ground floor of this kind of a retail building. So I think that in itself says a lot about image.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lambert.
Ira or Greg, do you have the other spaces leased out yet?
We do have 2 of the other spaces leased out and are trading paper with 5 or 6 different restaurants. Problem is that with current restrictions that we can't operate, and even we can't even operate in the parking lot. So the restaurants can't even, because it's an A lot, it's a residential lot. Even with the emergency order, they cannot go back there. So all we can put in this building right now is retail with an uncertain future. Right now, it is, you know, it's sad, but that's where we're at.
The other question I have is, are you, from my talking to Mr. Rand today, are you seeing this tenant, if it goes through, as kind of an anchor to attract other tenants?
So you say as an anchor to the other?
As an anchor, I mean, as an attraction to other tenants, that you actually have a space rented, and it's. I mean, is this going to be like the anchor tenant to bring in other tenants?
Yeah, I think the concept is that this would be more of a chain, and the other tenants that are going in there are not chain type tenants that would be in there. They would be more local restaurant, guys that are more startups than anything. Smaller spaces, incubator type spaces that would be going in there. So.
Okay, Ira, were you involved in the Jerry's Liquor project too?
No, I'm not.
Is Dave Rand on the phone call?
I'm involved with it.
Okay, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that both Jerry's Liquor and this site were going to be housing sites, but the community didn't want that, and so that became not the case. And that you had a very difficult time finding another housing developer who would be willing to build on these sites given the community opposition. And so this is what we ended up with. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so.
But the Jerry's Liquor site will be a beautiful building.
No, I no question about it, but both these sites could have been housing.
Yeah, Commissioner.
That's very disturbing to me. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Pastor.
Just to clarify, Greg, that what I think I hear you saying is that if you have this credit-worthy tenant, you are going to be more likely to be able to lease to mom and pop for the other spaces. Is that correct?
Right, okay. Right. That's essentially the concept. Okay. Because with the high turnover that you come in with other, I mean, everybody's seen it, different food halls or what you have high turnover, and that makes it very challenging to finance a building such as this.
And did I hear you also say earlier you guys would be open to having the arm in the parking lot so you could control access?
Yes.
And I have a question. Oh, would you all be open to some type of what I would call a plan approval that you come back in a year after certificate of occupancy for sort of a review of the security? And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think we have anything to hide or be ashamed of. I mean, that's what we would want as far as our performance with the site and being a good neighbor. I mean, we would have no objection to that at all.
I mean, well, just to be clear though, like you would come back in a year, we or staff, or I don't know, we can talk about this, commission would basically review your compliance with the noise and security conditions, and the neighborhood would have an opportunity to say, no, they've totally not lived up to their promises of security or safety or that kind of thing. And then we could impose additional conditions.
Sure. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're here to work with, be a part of the community.
Okay, so I'm gonna make sure you understand the extent of what I'm asking. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
The only thing that I would say is that if we did have some sort of limit of hours that we don't feel that security would be needed if we weren't operating in the middle of the night, as shown in that condition. If we had an hours restriction, it wouldn't make sense. I mean, I don't think every business that isn't operating needs security in the middle of the night as well. But
I guess I don't agree with that. I think that I'll be very blunt with you. I think it's going to be very hard to give you 24 hours. I think it is going to be more likely that you're going to get, at least I shouldn't say what anyone else is going to do. It's going to be very hard for me to recommend 24 hours. I'm going to be much more likely to say, okay, 12 to 5 or whatever the hours are. But given the neighborhood's significant concern about safety and security and loitering, and I think those things happen all day long, longer security is probably much more likely. And yes, I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Commissioner Raskin.
I don't have any additional questions now, but I saw on my screen that a few other telephone numbers had joined this meeting. So I wonder if there were some late public commenters that might have slipped in. But aside from that, I don't have any other questions.
Now, in terms of public comment, just to clarify, we had one unregistered number pop in that we're not going to answer because it wasn't registered, and then we had a repeat caller that already spoke.
Was the repeat caller the caller that was registered twice with the same number but for two separate individuals?
No.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, Commissioner Reese.
No questions.
So, before we close the public hearing here, I want to ask the applicant to speak to this. I am frankly struggling with making the findings that are required to permit what's being asked. And you've also kind of hinted that you may appeal whatever we decide because you're under an obligation to appeal it, because you're under an obligation to make a good faith effort to get 24 hours, and you got to go to the end of that line. So it doesn't really incentivize us to find a middle ground, because the middle ground isn't going to satisfy your legal obligation. I'm being very frank with you. That leaves me in a very difficult spot. And what I would like to ask is, it sounds like you have some familiarity with the way 7-Eleven does business. 2 weeks ago, we were here having the beginning of a very important conversation about mixes on the promenade, and we all said with great clarity that we have real concerns about equity cost access, and small operator access. So talk to us, help us understand why 7-Eleven, which does not have a terrific reputation nationwide, whose corporate does not have a terrific reputation. I'm not saying anything very controversial. Help us understand why 7-Eleven is compatible with, help us make these findings, because honestly, I'm having a lot of trouble.
Well, 7-Eleven provides retail goods and services. They provide essential goods and services. They, as part of their mix of products that they sell. It's going to be something that they sell that differentiates from everybody else that's within the, the building that we're going to have. So, that's all we can say is that at the end of the day, we're zone commercial. This is a commercial use that's going in, and they sell retail goods and services. And we're going to be respectful of the neighbors and everyone that goes along with it. And 7-Eleven is trying to change their perception. I mean, I see it, and I think that this particular store with brand new finishes, not a retail strip center, is going to prove that.
But if you're
Commissioner Landris, I'd like to add a few other things. The difference too, I think, in this particular store.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay? Or,
yeah, see Commissioner Raskin's hand, but I have other questions, so just letting him know. Okay, Commissioner Handelman. Ira.
Thank you. They're a tenant in a building. Our client is the one that's going to be responsible for a lot of these issues. And as we said in the beginning, he built the project lower than we could have. He's invested $5 million. He's going to have other tenants. So this is not a freestanding 7-Eleven that's not responsible to anybody else. The person that's going to be held accountable is our client. So he has a lot of incentive to do the right thing, and I think he will. And I think looking at the building, under any other circumstances, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And if it wasn't COVID, we may not. So, and as far as, the hours, again, at the end of the day, if that's what it's going to be, he's going to have to live with it and negotiate with 7-Eleven. A lot of those other stores that are less than 24 hours, I think they were older. I don't know if the new ones, but it gives him more incentive to negotiate if he failed. If he didn't fail, then it's harder to negotiate. So that's why we'd be hoping, even if we don't get everything we want, we'd appreciate getting what we can, and that'll help him with his negotiations down the road.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up with that. I need to be able to make these findings. And we heard from the public. We heard from a relatively diverse public. We actually didn't hear from anybody who was in favor of the project. I don't have a sense of your service area and how you see your service area as distinct, right? There was an argument that was made, if you want an aspirin, you're going to go to the CVS because it's going to be more affordable and it's within a half a mile. And I want to say I don't agree with the people who sort of said, well, we, the residents, didn't ask for this. That's not how a market, that's not how the local economy works. You have people, businesses come in, they try something, it succeeds or it fails. I'm not going down that road. But I am going down the road of help us understand how you arrived at the need, the case. You think it's going to work. You think it's going to be financially feasible. Presumably so does 7-Eleven. So what's the basis for that judgment?
One other correction. I think there was a letter of support from the Northeast Neighbors Board with conditions for the project.
Okay. That's important.
Yeah, I just want to bring that up.
Okay. I meant we didn't hear from anyone. No one called in. I know that there may have been more than one or two letters in support, but I want to understand. I want to be able to make it I can.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, could you just repeat the question real quick?
What's the thesis here? What makes you think? I mean, presumably somebody has done market research here. Tell us about the people we're not hearing from. Tell us about the people who would have called in to say that they want this.
Well, the only answer I could give you, and again, I don't work with 7-Eleven, I work with the developer. 7-Eleven doesn't go into a store. They do their market research, and this comes up all the time. There's a lot of them. I can't argue with that. They believe they're not going to invest the time and money and sign a long-term lease if they didn't think it would work. They do their market research. I can't give you the details of how. But again, the only thing I do know is that in today's market, there are not a lot of credit-worthy tenants. They do their market research. They believe that this site will work for them. And my client believes that they're going to sign a lease. They're investing and he's investing. So I can't give you more. I wish I could.
I understand.
And I just would add to that they do have coffee is something that they pride themselves in. So there's people that go to get coffee every morning, from 7-Eleven. So there's that. They have it's a convenient one-stop shop that is open that people can go to. If you go into CVS, you get stuck in a 15,000 square foot building where you just get stuck for people want to go into a 7-Eleven, be there for 1 or 2 minutes, grab what they need to get, what their essential goods are, and get out of there. Instead of getting stuck in 10 or 15 minutes, pick up a prescription, pill. It's a different service line. It's not CVS. It's not a grocery store. It's convenience. It's quick, and it provides goods and services around a diverse set of goods and services that you can get your products from.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Raskin, you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, well, let me ask this question to the applicants here. Is it fair to say that this 7-Eleven would provide low-cost prepared food items that are generally not available from other establishments within, say, a 5-block radius?
I think.
Go ahead, Greg. I think we can't say that, Commissioner. I haven't done the study, and I can't answer I don't think we can answer the question accurately. Greg?
I would imagine, though, that it is at the minimum, it's comparable to other stores and merchants around.
But Commissioner, the fact is it unique? No, and I think something that Commissioner Landris said, I mean, the community, I, again, respect everything and their concerns. I have the deepest respect. I've been doing community relations work for a long time. But, the people that do the investing, especially now, it's a tough time out there. And I think our client, I won't say he deserves a break. You got to make your decision based on the facts. But again, he's already demonstrated a lot. And I think today's market, it'll make it work. And I think the site, the building, it's going to be a different experience than a lot of the other standalone convenience stores, be they 7-Eleven or the ones in gas stations.
Well, and again, candidly, I think the concern here from the community might not be that it provides a different experience, but rather that there might be an opportunity here to provide some sort of value to the community through low-cost prepared food items. But if you're saying that that's not the case, then that's informative too.
The other stores that are there, the other options that Greg mentioned, this is not 7-Eleven. This is going to be a bakery and other stores there that are going to provide a variety. So this is not a standalone. So if this is the anchor that makes it work, it's going to provide opportunities for 6 or 7 other small-time things. So to answer your question, this site will be unique. I don't think there's going to be anything like it, the variety and everything, but he needs the anchor. So the answer is I think we could make it a unique site. But if this was a standalone 7-Eleven, we'd have nothing to say. But it's not a standalone.
Yeah, does it compare to Bristol Farms? Of course, it's not as expensive as Bristol Farms or something like that. So I mean, there are goods and services that are less than others that are nearby for sure.
Okay. While I have your attention, let me just ask this: if we were to move forward with this, would it be a deal breaker to remove some of the security features that are considered by some to be hostile architecture?
Again, let me answer that. Commissioner, we're just trying to respond. If we did listen to the community and we did listen to the police, then we could come before you and you'd say, why didn't you listen to the community? Why didn't you listen to the police? If you don't think they're appropriate, we're okay with it. We're just trying to be responsive to the experts and the community.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't, But if you decided that you didn't think they were appropriate, that's your decision. Then you make the decision and we'll do what you ask us to do.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Are we ready to move forward? All right. Well, then we will thank the applicant, close the public hearing. It is getting late, and believe it or not, we have another item after this. So let us move now to a resolution of this matter.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah. Commissioner Lambert.
I want to clarify with staff. The zoning ordinance allows convenience markets in this zoning district, correct?
Sorry, it allows convenient markets and...
It allows convenience stores, markets, whatever you call them, in the zoning district. Not a question, correct?
Well, with the conditional use permit.
Of course, I understand that. But
Right.
it is nevertheless an allowed land use in this district. And the purpose of the conditions are to make it as compatible as we can with the neighborhood. Is that correct?
Right, correct.
Will this project go to the ARB for signage oversight?
Yeah, they would go for their signage. I don't believe the ARB included a sign program.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I don't believe the ARB included the sign program, so they would go back to the ARB for signage.
Did they give you some input, though, about what the exterior should look like? In terms of signage, they gave you nothing?
No, not for the signage, no.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We do have signage approved for this for ARB.
Oh, you do? That was included in the 16
Yes.
ARB. Okay.
We have an approved ARB sign program for this.
Okay, I had actually one more question I just remembered. When we look at a convenience market in this district, is saturation a criterion we use for whether or not to approve it through a conditional use permit? Is that an issue for us to discuss?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing.
Markets. I'm assuming these people would not be interested in the site if there were market saturation to the point where it wouldn't be economic for them to do it. So, but what I'm asking you is whether or not saturation is a criterion for our determining whether to approve this project or not.
No, it's not part of one of the findings for approving the conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to actually ask a follow-up to that question then, because I want to understand, which is that we are required to make a finding related to a diverse mix of uses. How would we make that finding? What constitutes a diverse mix of uses?
Well, one's a convenience store and the rest are food stores that they're looking for there. Diverse use.
Well, no, operationalize it. What's the? I'm happy to move into discussion or hear from staff. I just want to understand how we operationalize diverse.
I'm not sure, Chair, which finding are you looking at that says diverse mix of uses? I see.
There's a reference, I believe, to Blues. Let me find the. Hang on. Let me find the finding.
Are you talking about E, the proposed use is compatible with existing and permissible land uses within the district and the general plan, general area?
Talking about finding two, specifically goal B1 encourages local serving mix of uses.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, diverse. You're right. It's not diverse. It's mix. I apologize. I thought I saw the word diverse, but it's mix. So what would constitute a mix in this? I mean, it could be that there are open hours that other people aren't open, or it could be that there's a. I'm just trying to understand what constitutes a mix here.
I mean, I think in terms of obviously, this is a discretionary permit, and it's absolutely at the commission's discretion as to how you want to make these findings. In terms of that goal, where it says a mix of uses, I think we would look at that as different types of uses. So, in terms of in this case, what's presented here is, or what's been presented by the project proponent is that there's, eateries on site, there may be retail. So, and the second part of that, which is encouraging local serving retail and neighborhood uses. So that's, part of the assessment. It seems what's being proposed is commercial uses. That was part of the thinking behind that finding.
Okay. Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
Yeah, just a simple question for either Heidi or the current planner. Can we turn down a project solely on the basis of community opposition?
So I'm happy to take a stab at that. What you are asked to do tonight is to evaluate all the evidence before you and see whether or not you can make the findings required by the municipal code. And so the community opposition is evidence that you can take under advisement, but it does need to connect to whether or not you are able to make the findings. Does that help?
Okay.
Let me just respond to that. Actually, the two housing projects proposed for these sites were turned down because of community opposition. So we lost a couple hundred units of housing units. So that could help answer your question.
Yeah. And if I may, I want to look at finding number 8, and I want to be really careful here, but I would like to understand. Finding number 8 states the proposed convenience market would not be detrimental to the public interest, health, safety, convenience, or general welfare, et cetera, and would be subject to recommended operational standards, which we think we've heard. A lot of the public comment and a lot of the information that has been presented to us has to do with the specific brand of the convenience market that is at issue. And so just as we are constrained, you've told us in the past, Heidi and Jing, that we are not allowed to sort of think about who the developer is. We're supposed to think about the project. What is our range of discretion given the information available to us and the track record of this particular brand in Santa Monica. Are we allowed to consider that or not?
So I'll take a stab at it, and then Jean can hop in. What you're approving is a convenience market, and as you know, CUPs run with the land. So if you are to approve a convenience market this evening and 7-Eleven leaves that space, if another tenant comes in within the requisite amount of time and then the use isn't abandoned, another it's not tied to 7-Eleven. It's tied to the land, and it's tied to the convenience market use. So if you were to permit this CUP this evening and 7-Eleven left and another convenience market went in, they would not need to go back to the commission to operate a convenience market in that space.
Commissioner Raskin. Thank you, Heidi.
Just a follow-up question for Heidi. Wouldn't it be true, though, that if we were to deny the CUP solely based on the identity of the applicant, that could implicate equal protection problems?
Yes. We would have concerns about that because it is, again, tied to the use and not the particular brand that you are examining this evening.
Good question, Alice.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Anybody?
Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I can't stay quiet anymore. This is very reminiscent of our fast food discussion a couple of weeks ago. I think that if we were talking about a 24-hour Whole Foods mini mart, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So I think it's very instructive what Heidi said about we can't discriminate based on the actual tenant because the use is the use. And I agree that 7-Eleven has an abysmal history in Santa Monica. There's no question about that. But hopefully that won't be happening here. And then not selling alcohol is a giant step in that direction. So I want us all to remember that these two sites, because of community opposition, lost the chance to be housing. So I'm not sure how far we go with community opposition guiding our path, or whether we should twist ourselves into pretzels to make this not work because of all that we've heard tonight. And I'm not here to get people to like me, which you've probably figured out already. And I don't think that 24 hours has anything to do with anything. I think it's that the 7-Eleven is the issue. That said, I'd be willing to go from midnight to 5 if that's what other people want. But I don't think that's the issue. I think the sole issue here is the 7-Eleven. And if there's an equal protection issue, then we really need to pay attention to that.
Thank you. I think I agree with that. I mean, I do have a lot of worries about security, and I do want to propose that they have to come back in a year and prove to us that they can be a good operator, and that if they can't, then they need to do the things that need to happen. I would like to reduce the delivery hours. I am fine with 12 to 5. I think it's very hard. And Commissioner Lambert, I'm sure you are not suggesting that because there was opposition to the housing that this is somehow
what?
Payback. I'm sure you are not suggesting.
I wasn't even here then. It's all.
Yeah, I wasn't either. So I just want to be clear that that is not what this commission is.
Oh, of course not. No, of course not. No, but I'm just saying that if you let community opposition go too far, that you can end up with something like that.
But I agree that I'm not sure that, I think the only finding that I could even think about making to deny is number 8. And Commissioner Raskin's very good point about equal protection, and this Leslie's point about this is really about the 7-Eleven. I'm just not sure we can make the finding to deny.
Commissioner Fresco.
One thing that I am a little concerned about, because, we don't have a lot of these A lots that are parking behind commercial spaces facing neighborhoods. And they do have a certain kind of unique condition that we've seen in other applications where just the sound of the tires on the loose gravel dirt that's in the lot and the doors slamming and clicking. It's really quite noisy and disturbing for tenants. And it's echoey, and they're going to build 8-foot cinder block walls, and it's going to be bouncing around. And, maybe there's some kind of mitigation we can put in for that. I'm not sure what it is. I remembered one application we looked at where the possibility of plant material on the walls, vines or something, they would have to be really well maintained so they didn't start attracting rodents on top of all their other problems. But, something to make sure that this parking lot that is going to be used maybe until midnight, maybe all night, we haven't decided yet, but whatever it is, it's going to be nighttime, and it's not a huge disturbance to the adjacent neighbors. So I don't know what you guys think of that, but I feel.
Can I ask a question of that? I want to ask a follow-up question about that. If there were no A lot, if we were talking about a storefront with entry and exit only on Wilshire, mid-block, would we care about 24-hour operation?
I would care a lot less. That was why I asked that question earlier about parking out front. But it turns out there's no meters out front either. So everybody who goes there is going to end up going around back for parking.
No, that's not true. There's a bus stop, but there's parking beyond the bus stop.
Meters.
Not on that block. I have it on my.
They're over at 9 o'clock.
What?
They're over at 6.
They're over at 9 o'clock at night. So if you're
Either 6 or 9.
Yeah, well, they're all the way down at the other end of the block. It's all red in front of this place and in front of the next door west of it. So,
Yeah, I'd really like to close that parking lot overnight. I'd really like to close that parking lot.
I think that would be a really.
They would do the gate. They already said they'd be happy to gate the parking lot.
Right, but I'd really like to close it at 11. I don't care if they stay open till 12. I wouldn't care if they stayed open till 12 or even maybe 1 if the lot were inaccessible, because then we'd be providing some buffer to the neighborhood. But it sounds like we don't have that.
And you can't do that because then you're taking away their parking, and then they violate the zoning code by not having parking.
About parking.
So, guys, tonight I hear a lot of discussion. I'd like to make a motion and see if it can stick. So I'd like to move staff's recommendation on the hours from 12 to 5. I'd like to add in the 1-year come-back review, show us that you live by this. I'd like to limit their hours to loading. I don't see why they need to load past 9 at night and something earlier on the weekends. I think 8 morning on the weekends. Those are the key conditions that I want to add in there, and also get rid of the humps on the benches. Hopefully at some point in our society we're going to work through this homeless issue. And I know that we have a lot of. Well, hopefully we're going to work through that, and I don't think we should design our projects that we're always going to have homeless and vagrant issues. So I'd like to get rid of the harsh architectural features, like the humps on the streets. So that's my motion, and I'm hoping that I'll get a second and we can push it forward.
But I would add to it also the no loitering signs.
Yeah.
And the security guard.
What?
In the security plan, wasn't there like a security guard as well?
That was from 12 to 5. That was a requirement from 12 to 5. But if they're not operational from 12 to 5, I wonder if there's value in that, or if we're just increasing costs to this property owner.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I see Commissioner already in the queue, but I want to make a point of information, which is that the STOA does not include the divided benches. I had a conversation with staff about this. Planning department, I'll just say it out loud because I was really happy to hear it. There is no endorsement here of this kind of defensive or frankly offensive architecture that's in place on the part of our team here at City Planning. The applicant, is going to make the applicant's own choices about what they want to do. So are you suggesting that we not permit that we actually bar them from doing this? Because that would be our motion, because the STOA is currently silent on the architecture.
If it's not in there, then I don't want to add it. I don't want to talk about it. I just don't think it's required.
Oh, well, you don't want to require it. Okay. Yeah. I had discussed that with the applicant as well. So the STOA is pretty clean in that.
Chair, I just wanted to add, because it seems like you're talking about the security plan, I wanted to make sure the commission is aware there is a supplemental report. It's not in the draft STOA, but within that report, there is the staff recommendation to amend condition 5, and there are 3 physical security conditions and 3 operational security conditions that are recommended that replaces condition 5 in your draft STOA. I apologize, we didn't have time to issue a new STOA, but I just wanted that to be clear in terms of the staff recommendation on the security plan. So we did not adopt everything that the applicant wanted to do, because either we didn't think it was appropriate or had no relation to the CUP.
So, Jing, am I correct? Is this correct? I'm looking at attachment B. Is attachment B part of the STOA?
No, it's not. It's not. So if you look at it's actually in the text of the supplemental staff report.
Okay.
And it's in the last part, page 4, bottom of page 4, top of page 5. So we provided the attachments because that was information provided by the applicant. It is not that is not staff endorsing that plan or agreeing with it. Our recommendation is actually within the body of the report, and I apologize if that was not clear. So you can see bottom of page 4, top of page 5.
Yeah, I'll read it into the record for people who are listening. 8-foot walls shall be constructed along the south and west property lines abutting residential properties. LED lighting shall be installed as recommended in the Santa Monica Police Department security assessment, including but not limited to parking lot, exterior walkways, entrance points, and area behind the transformer and near the electrical switchgear. Security guard on site to monitor the rear surface parking lot from midnight to 5 a.m. Security cameras with full view of all exits and entrances in all exterior areas. Exterior, interior security cameras operate 24 hours a day with saved data. Enter and exit only from Wilshire, and the rear access door from the parking lot that leads to common restrooms and convenience market tenant space is exit only or emergency exit only, subject to compliance with fire and building code requirements. Right. So we're silent on the benches. We're silent on some other things. I would recommend that the LED lighting be shielded and pointed away from any residential areas.
It goes down.
Right. I'm just naming it out loud like we did for the last one, that it should be shielded and pointed away from residential areas.
And now that we have the clarity on that, I would ask that we remove that security guard. I'm not sure what the value of it is when the store is closed.
If it's closed, there's no reason for the security guard.
Right. We have cameras. We don't need to. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's fine. Great.
What are your loading hours for your motion? Ending at 9 p.m., but what time are you starting?
5 a.m. For loading or general?
But loading.
Who's asking? I'm open to suggestions, but it just seemed it was too early as it was planned.
Right. How about 7 a.m. on weekdays and 8 or 9 a.m. on weekends?
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Yeah.
Okay. I like it.
What about noise in the parking?
Mario's been in the queue for a while, so I want to go to him.
I'd like to make an amendment, if it's friendly, that we change the hours from 6 to 11 instead of from 5 to 12.
What were the hours? I'm sorry, Mario. I couldn't.
Can we change the hours from 6 to 11 instead of from 5 to 12 you're proposing?
That's not acceptable to me. I mean, frankly, I don't think the hours really matter at all anyway. I mean, I don't think that's sort of a straw horse.
Yeah, You know what? We have a year. I would like to put that year review on them, and if they have problems, then I would be comfortable trying to limit their hours. But I would like to keep it the way it is now.
Yeah, me too.
Can I go back to loading for a second?
I'm sorry?
I want to go back to loading, but
Yeah.
if you want to finish this topic.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if you look at the hours their distinctiveness for me is also in their hours of operation. So I have an easier time making the findings if they're opening at 5 and closing at midnight, because that's 3 to 4 hours of operational time that nobody around them is offering in the immediate vicinity. So that helps me make the findings. If I lose that, it's troubling for me.
With the loading, do we agree that those limitations are only if you're loading from the parking lot, but if they're loading from Wilshire, they can do it at any time?
We do want to.
If you look at me.
Can we just clarify that loading from Wilshire is not permitted? We cannot
well, then it's not an
permit
issue.
it.
Okay, well, then never mind.
And that includes trash, right? That includes. We're going to have to do if we're closing at midnight, we're going to have to add the condition that they are doing the trash sweep and they're out by 1. Right?
There's a condition number 3 that has to do with exterior activities such as trash disposal of bottles and noise generating trash, or the maintenance activity that shall not occur during the hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. daily.
Even better. Great. Old.
And that was what we did, I think, on the last 7-Eleven.
That is correct.
That's right. No, that's good. Okay.
What about the noisy parking lot?
What?
Oh, I like the acoustically treated walls. Is that friendly?
Well, when you're saying acoustically treated, are you talking about putting landscape lines on there?
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
I think that there's value in doing landscaping on the walls, just from aesthetics. I don't know how much quieter it'll make. That's a good idea.
Well, it certainly keeps it from being blighted or helps.
That's right. Yep.
Except for the
What about
rats.
some pesky nuisance bike racks? Just kidding. The bike racks were a nuisance.
We're not requiring, there's no plop on this one, right? This is just, we're doing our plan on the dais. So, do we want to make sure, do we want to look for compatibility with the Wilshire safety plan, given the comments we heard from people? Or are we?
The Wilshire safety plan is going on its own. And this project, I think to say on the traffic, I'd like to say, which I think is the response here, I meant to ask staff, is the traffic was analyzed when this building went in. And they looked at having ground floor retail uses, and that's when it was appropriate to do that. If they were changing the use from that,
that's right. You're right.
And I will highlight, if traffic's really a concern, housing on these lots would be fantastic, as it reduces trips, vehicle miles traveled, and it generates less trips.
Indeed, it does.
That's true.
Yep. You want traffic, build housing.
Let's go. Let's do this.
Hey, are we ready to vote, or anybody else want to add stuff? Okay, well, let's see what we can do here. Can we, let's vote on, what are we voting? We're voting on a straight up CUP, right? Just one.
That is correct, yes.
And you're going to bring us back the STOA next time?
We will bring you back the STOA, yeah.
Do it that way. Okay. Let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
No.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Lambert?
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor?
Yes.
Commissioner Raskin?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
And Chair Landris?
Yes. That passes. All right. It is, friends and colleagues, after 11 p.m. So what is your pleasure for 9D? Is there a motion?
Can we waive the staff report?
Would love to.
We should go fast.
Well, Commissioner Raskin?
Ellis, Yeah.
Lance, before you begin this, I have to recuse myself from this item because the property owner is a client of my law firm.
Ah, okay.
Sure you do. Sure you do, Commissioner.
Paralegal?
All right. Thanks, fellas. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Somebody named Do Not Answer just left the meeting. I don't know what to make of that. All right, we'll wait for you.
But like, if we can't waive the staff
Okay, well,
report,
I need a motion.
I move
I think
to
we
keep
can, but I need a
going.
motion.
I
Okay, is there a second?
move that we take the item up.
Great. Without objection, can we, is there a motion to waive the staff report from Commissioner Pastor?
I
Is there a
move
second?
to waive the staff report.
Made by Pastor, seconded by Lambert. I am not seeing any objections to that. There's no public comment, correct?
Well, no, they have to be given the opportunity. You have to open the public comment.
I'm talking about there's nobody calling in to give comment, right?
Correct. There's no callers registered.
All right, so let's go straight to the applicant. If you can do it in less than 10 minutes, I think that would be really awesome.
Did you already do your ex parte communications, if I may
right.
interject?
Thank you. See, that's what happens when you don't have a cheat sheet. Any ex partes? Commissioner Lambert?
I shopped in Banana Republic more than I should have. I'm very familiar with the building.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I remember, wasn't that it was a J.C. Penney?
Move it along, Sean, move it along.
Let's move it along. Okay, I've been to that building many times. Let's go.
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Rhonda Bernardi? No? Commissioner Fresco? Okay, we'll hear from the applicant. Let's do this thing.
Thank you very much, commissioners and staff, for the report that's now been waived, and I'll do this in well under 10 minutes. My name is Jeff Kreshik. I'm Senior Vice President for Federal Realty Investment Trust. We've been a longtime owner of this building, over 22 years, and we own 11 buildings on the Promenade and on Wilshire Boulevard. We've been a good member of this community, and as I mentioned, a longtime owner and working on the retail, from a retail perspective on 3rd Street Promenade. I've got almost 30 years of my personal career on the Promenade as well, dating back to the original owner, CIM Group. We're requesting the ability to convert part of the former Banana Republic into a fitness use. The idea, obviously, with changes in retail happening and changes abound on 3rd Street Promenade, this gives us some flexibility to bring new life to the Promenade. New uses generate additional traffic that will be beneficial to other uses on the Promenade. And of course, I don't have to detail some of the challenges that retail is facing today. So this gives us some flexibility to find alternative uses and ultimately breathe new life into the Promenade. The lack of alternatives certainly have made this a challenge. COVID hasn't made it any easier, but we do believe long-term fitness is a good use and somewhat underrepresented, especially large-scale fitness in the market, with only Equinox in the immediate area. So we ultimately are asking for the approval to do fitness here and to have that flexibility to reinvigorate 3rd Street Promenade. I promised I'd keep it really short.
That was impressive. Any questions? Commissioner Fresco.
I have a question of staff. That was a great staff report, by the way. So if in the future the applicant or the tenant wanted to rearrange the interior configurations of things, would they be allowed to move that juice bar that's kind of towards the front that gives the front kind of active interest from the street and from the promenade? Would that be able to be set deeper into the building where it wouldn't be visible, or can we condition that that object stay visible from the sidewalk?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Fresco. Yes, certainly that juice bar is not tied to that one particular location as proposed by the current applicant. We would have to be flexible in terms of the configuration of the interior spaces depending on the requirements of that particular tenant. So we're not tied to any location for any aspect of the operation.
So can I ask the tenant if that would be a condition that would ruin your business, is to have a juice bar in an active use like that where people are moving around just inside the front windows?
Well, we're not the tenant. We're actually the building owner. There is not a specific tenant identified at this time.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Other questions?
I might posit that probably whoever the tenant is, if they want to have outside business, they're going to want it there for marketing.
Yeah.
I hope.
Well, maybe we could. We'll have a discussion.
Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi?
Well, I go on to discussion and move the question.
I have a question, though. I need to ask the applicant a question. You're proposing a very, very large, I think this is terrific, by the way, because, you're really resident serving. I'm imagining you're going to have folks coming in from the Wilmot area, bringing them down to the promenade, resident serving. It's great. However, if I'm coming on my bike, not a lot of good options for bike parking on the promenade, on the north end of the promenade. Can I bring my bike into the facility and lock it up inside?
That's to be determined. It really is going to be dependent on who the actual operator is. I mean, there's some challenges with physically storing a number of bikes, and then there's security, and then it's somewhat incumbent upon the tenant then to take over, making sure that bike is still there and in the right place. So I can't answer that today without a tenant in tow.
Okay, that's a fair point. I would like to figure out a way to encourage people to come to that site without using a car, and we're going to need to figure out a way for them to securely, not have let's be blunt, not have their bike stolen from outside the exercise location while they're working out.
We did work with the mobility department to address bike parking requirements. Working with the team, it was found that there isn't sufficient site given the historic building to put it, so we are actually paying the in lieu fees for both long-term and short-term bike parking. But still would be open if we could figure out a way to put it. But it was staff found that because of the historic nature of our building, the typical ways of finding bike parking is really not possible.
Interesting. Okay. I think we talked about this when we did Promenade something or other, that we liked the idea of larger exercise sites. So thank you. Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi.
I would like to move on to discussion, and it start by moving the question.
I'll second.
Okay.
Any discussion?
I would like to know if it would be friendly to include something that just said that I haven't really thought through the language in it, so the spaces by the promenade facing windows will be active spaces and not hallways and gaps, and I just want to make sure there's activity in the windows. That's what I want, and I don't know how to say it right.
That's fine.
How about to the greatest extent possible, active uses will be along the street frontages?
I consider that friendly.
Yeah, we're totally friendly. Yep. Okay, can we do that? Can we approve this though at a night, or do we need to bring it back to us?
No, I think we can. If the motion is for the staff recommendation with that amendment with that one change from Commissioner Fresco. Are you ready for the question?
Yes.
Okay. It looks like we are.
All right, Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi.
All right, the applicant, like he's concerned about something. Can we reopen the public?
We were hoping that there was going to be one point brought up by Rather during his staff report. We just had a question about one of the conditions. It's condition number 2, limiting window graphics. we understand and, design this project. We get pedestrian orientation. This is why we want to be here. We did work with this earlier, and, the code does allow 20% of window coverings in the downtown area. And this is only a concern. Our prospective tenant in this tentative floor layout we have, one of the key items here, if you look in the entryway, is the kids club. And as we all know, working with historic buildings brings its fair share of challenges. And so we really struggled to locate the kids club anywhere but proximate to the lobby area and the front desk. And that's so that, any children being supervised can have appropriate supervision. If we couldn't locate that area behind because there's utilities and lots of problems with this historic building, and so we do request some allowance to have vinyl graphics, nothing exceeding what's in the code. It's only 23 linear feet, but just in that front area there. It would have to be, obviously go through the historic approval and the specific graphics, but we did make a point to show that there would be vinyl graphics located in that area in our plans here. And are just concerned that condition of approval will, create an unsafe situation for, that kids club area there in our plan. So we just wanted to bring that to your attention and see if you have any advice or suggestions.
I consider that.
Chair Landress, if I may add, this is rather Duong. If I may add to that point, the applicant just made, I had intended to include that discussion item in the staff presentation. If you would like, I can share my screen with you of that slide to illustrate what it is that the applicant is proposing as a cover or screen for the kids club area.
Sure. Let's see it.
This was not, even though it was shown on the plan, it was not fully identified as what this image or graphics would look like. So these images were received by staff just yesterday on Tuesday. So that's why they were not included in your packet. So I will go ahead and share the screen.
Yeah. And just in the interest of time, while you're setting up the computer, and maybe you or Jing can tell us, are you comfortable with what they're proposing? Because it sounds like we are inclined to be.
I think as a general approach, the whole idea of like visual transparency is that we generally don't want people to put opaque coverings on windows, particularly on an active street like the promenade. The way the condition is written, though, it does allow, it's basically saying that it doesn't limit visual transparency and visibility into it. I think it depends on what's being proposed, and that's kind of what Rather is trying to bring up at the moment.
Right.
So basically, this window film, I guess we'll see it eventually.
Can you see my screen?
No.
No.
I would add that the reason we didn't submit the specific graphics is that, the graphics are intended to change, and we didn't want to include the graphics in this conditional use permit application. We just wanted to show the location where there would be graphics, as any graphics we put on this project will have to be approved through a signed program by the historic.
Rather, we just saw your screen just now. Whatever you did there was working.
Well, what if we put a modification to this that says that things can be on the window as long as they maintain the overall transparency or something like that?
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
We're just on the right slide.
But this is just an example, right?
Yeah, I only see the title slide right now.
No, I know.
I don't want to do that.
Oh, so here, this is the screen. So what the applicant's proposing is these images of people working out or...
Plans. We're still seeing the ground floor plan.
The floor plan.
Oh.
Now it's the frontage.
So I'm seeing a different screen as I'm scrolling through than what you're seeing.
They're showing us a different window.
Now you have the proposed window covering sheet up.
Yes. Okay. This is the image that the applicant is proposing to apply to the window display area, and as you can see, it would totals about 27.5 linear feet of a total of 253 of a total of 92.6 linear feet for the entire frontage facing the promenade, and that essentially equates to about 29.4% of the entire frontage, and or 32% of the amount of glazing. So the image below shows exactly the location of the graphics. You have two windows will be covered up directly facing the promenade, and then as the display window turns the corner, you see another panel that is next to or closest to the entry.
And the purpose of this is what?
Privacy Kids Club.
Privacy. Okay.
Maybe, I don't think that's friendly, actually. I think the kids, if they need the privacy, need to be more internal in the club, because I think that is contrary to everything we say we want on the promenade, is to have a big flashy graphic like that is not appropriate, and there are just a lot of things about it that don't fit with the program.
I'm going to agree.
And this issue was discussed early on as staff was reviewing the proposal and drafting the staff report, was alerted to the applicant stating that if the tenant would consider relocating the kids club elsewhere where this type of privacy screen would not be necessary, or perhaps treating the windows or display window differently so that this type of film or graphics would not be necessary. So we suggested that the applicant explore other alternatives in trying to provide the necessary privacy screen. Perhaps this may not be the best alternative.
So let's okay. I think we need to kind of put a pin on this one. I will say I'm concerned as well that if you're walking in off of Wilshire, walking down the promenade, you've got. I don't like the idea of you seeing a graphic right in front of you like that. That is not consistent with the purposes of the promenade. I'm not sure we can fix that at this moment. So, Commissioner Fondo Bernardi, I agree with Commissioner Fresco. It's not friendly. So, we?
Let's leave it out.
What?
We're gonna leave it out. We're gonna keep the staff recommendation the way it is. We're not gonna make room for this.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're gonna have to find a different solution. Okay.
Can we, as the applicant, make a comment?
I'm sorry.
The public hearing is closed.
Okay. The hearing is closed. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Were we ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay. I think if we can take the applicants off screen, we're out of the public hearing. Thanks. All right, let's have the roll call.
Okay, so this is, again, just to restate the motion, it's staff recommendation with promenade-facing portion of the tenant space, the active uses to the greatest extent feasible. Commissioner Fondo Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Lambert?
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor?
Yes.
Commissioner Raskin?
He's recused?
We were recused.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
And Chair Landris?
Yes, and that passes 6-0 with Commissioner Raskin taking no part in this item. So
you'll need to also have a motion to approve the STOA tonight as well, please.
Moved.
Seconded. Let's have a roll call.
Okay, Commissioner Fondo Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Lambert?
Yes.
Commissioner Pastor?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
And Chair Landris?
Yes, and that passes 6-0 with no participation due to the recusal of Commissioner Raskin. This brings us to 11:30. We are at exactly 6 hours. I bid you all good night.
We made it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.